Let me start with something that I think sits quietly in the hearts of a lot of fathers, even if we don't always say it out loud. You can be doing a lot of things right as a dad. You're providing, you're protecting, you're showing up, you're involved. And yet there's this question that lingers underneath all of that. And I know it's really important to all of you. When my kids leave my house, are they actually going to keep the faith? Not pretend it, not inherit it, not perform it because that's what they've always known, but actually want it, actually choose it, actually build their life on it. Because we've all seen the other version. Kids grow up around church, they know the language, they understand the expectations, they've heard the stories, and then somewhere along the way, something disconnects. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's subtle, but they begin to drift. Not always because they've rejected God, but because of what they experienced didn't feel real enough to build their life on. And if you're a dad who cares about your kids spiritually, that question matters deeply because the goal isn't just exposure. The goal is ownership. Not just do they know this, but do they want this? That changes how we approach fatherhood. Passing down faith is not about control, it's about formation. And formation doesn't happen primarily through information. It happens through relationship, modeling, consistency, and lived experience over time. You can give your kids every resource, every program, every church camp, every devotional, and still miss the thing that matters most, which is you, your presence, your example, the way your faith shows up when no one's watching and when everyone is. I spent 25 years as a pastor, and I watched a lot of families navigate this. The ones who got it right weren't necessarily the ones with the most structured Bible time or the most impressive spiritual routines. They were the ones where kids could see faith breathed out in ordinary moments. They were the ones where dad was in the room, spiritually, emotionally, relationally, present, engaged, and real. That leaves a mark that lasts far longer than any other program. So today, let me give you 5 ways to think about this. First, model a faith that is real, not just required. Your kids are not drawn to what you say you believe nearly as much as what they watch you live. And one of the biggest mistakes I see is dads quietly stepping out of the role of spiritual leader. In many homes, faith gets defaulted to mom or outsourced to the church. And I want to say this clearly. No, you're the man in the family. You lead. You get the kids up and to church. You pray with your kids. You initiate spiritual conversations. You bring faith into everyday life. Children's ministry and youth ministry are valuable. They are partners, but they are not the primary disciplers of your children. You are. Because when dads disengage spiritually, kids don't just notice the absence, they interpret it. They begin to assume faith is optional or secondary or not strong enough to shape real life, just a spare tire to get out of the trunk when there's a crisis. But when a father steps in and owns that role, it carries weight. Now, here's the tension. Modeling doesn't mean perfection. In fact, perfection is one of the fastest ways to make faith feel fake. Authenticity is what draws kids in. Your kids need to see your faith show up in real life. They need to see what it looks like when you're frustrated, when you're wrong, and when you need to make something right. I remember a moment that still sticks with me. I was at a hotel with my wife and my daughter, and I was rude to the front desk employee over the phone. It wasn't some dramatic outburst, but it was sharp, it was impatient, and it was unnecessary. And my daughter saw it. And she confronted me about it. In that moment, I had a choice. I could ignore it, justify it, and move on, or I could own it. I apologized. I told her I was wrong. I told her it didn't reflect who I want to be. And I told her that following Jesus means I should treat people the way he would, and that I don't excuse my behavior. I take responsibility for it. Now, that wasn't easy. But in that moment, along with plenty of other ones, That shaped her understanding of faith in a different way than anything I could have said in a structured setting. Because faith is not about acting like you have it all together. It's about showing what it looks like to walk with God when you don't. That's exactly what Scripture points to in Deuteronomy 6 when it talks about weaving faith into everyday life. When you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. Faith is not an event, it's a way of living. Second, connect faith to relationship, not just rules. One of the fastest ways to make faith unattractive is to reduce it to behavior management. If faith becomes a list of rules, do this, don't do that, act this way, avoid that, your kids may comply for a while, but eventually they will start asking whether it's even worth it. Because rules without relationship always feels empty. At its core, faith is about knowing God, not just obeying Him. And your relationship with your kids is shaping how they understand that. If your presence feels distant, critical, or primarily corrective and judgmental, they may begin to project that onto God. They may start to see Him as someone who is always watching for what they get wrong. But when your kids feel known, valued, and safe with you, they are far more open to the idea that a personal relationship with God is possible. This is why connection matters so much. You are not just dad, you are your child's first and most formative picture of what God is like. I know that's heavy. That's not designed for pressure to paralyze you. It's a reason to lean in. When a child feels secure in your love, truth becomes something they can receive instead of something forced upon them. But when they feel like your love is tied to their performance, faith begins to feel like pressure instead of invitation. Third, make faith a conversation, not a lecture. As your kids grow, especially into the teenage years, something shifts. They begin to ask deeper questions. They begin to think more independently. They start to wrestle with what they believe and why they believe it. And if faith has only been delivered to them as instruction, this is often where it starts to break down and fall flat. Because instruction informs, but conversation transforms. Your kids don't just need answers, they need a place to process. They need space to ask questions without feeling like they're disappointing you. They need room to wrestle without fear of being shut down. They need to know that doubt doesn't disqualify them from a relationship. Without processing it, they're merely doing it on autopilot. It may look good on the outside, but faith is really about the heart. I've talked with so many adult children of deeply religious and even strict fathers who said some version of this. I didn't feel like I could ask what I was really thinking. Here's the outcome I saw. Those under religious compliance while in the home went full tilt the other direction after leaving it. How many kids have you seen who, under legalistic faith as a teen, completely rebelled once they left for college? They were free from the oversight of mom and dad, and because their faith never really became theirs while in the home, they lost all restraint and control once leaving it. Partying, rebellion, poor grades, sexual promiscuity, you name it. Those unmasked questions quietly moved them away from faith. Not because the faith was wrong, but because there was never a safe place to bring it. Dad never asked processing questions. Dad's faith was external. Dad's faith was all about looking good and never having honest conversations, nor allowing his children to see honest faith. Dad, you can be that safe place for your child. You can be the person they bring the hard questions to, the person with whom they process faith, if you create the environment for that. And when a father creates that kind of environment, something powerful happens. Faith becomes something they engage with instead of something they distance themselves from. Think about how Jesus interacted with people. He didn't just lecture. He asked questions. He told stories. He invited people into a process. That's a powerful model for us as dads. Because if your child feels like they can't bring their questions to you, they won't stop asking questions. They'll just take them somewhere else. But if they know they can come to you, even with uncertainty, even with confusion, even with some drift from faith, you remain part of their spiritual journey. And staying in the conversation is much more important than winning every argument about faith. Fourth, love them as they are, not just who you want them to be. This is really important. If your child feels like they are only fully accepted when they behave like the ideal Christian kid, faith becomes exhausting. Now, as a pastor, my kids already felt this innate pressure to be the pastor's kids. I was fortunate to serve in a church that was authentic, without pretense, and who gave my children space to be who they were, not some caricature of a pastor's kid. Kids who live with an expectation of some ideal self will begin to associate God with pressure instead of grace. But that is not the gospel. Romans 5:8 reminds us that God demonstrates his love for us in while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. God's love is not based on performance. It's rooted in who he is, and as fathers, we are meant to reflect that. That means we don't over-spiritualize everything in a way that minimizes real emotion or real pain. It means we don't jump straight to quoting scripture when what our child needs first is to be understood. It means we don't present God as a caricature, a cosmic policeman waiting to catch them, or a distant, powerless figure who doesn't really engage in real life. Your kids need to see a God who is present, powerful, compassionate, and good. And they learn that in large part through you. When they struggle, do you move toward them or away from them? When they fail, mess up, even disobey, do they experience shame or guidance? When they are honest, do they feel safe or judged? Because your response is shaping their theology more than your explanations ever will. Theology lived is theology believed, and what you demonstrate in hard moments will outlast everything you've ever explained to them. And here's the fifth way to pass down a faith that they actually want. Show them that faith actually works in real life. At some point, every child is asking a very practical question. Does this really matter? Does faith make a difference in how we live? Does it hold up when life gets hard? Does it change anything? If faith only shows up on Sundays or in religious language, it will eventually feel disconnected from real life. But when your kids see your faith shaping how you handle stress, conflict, disappointment, and failure, it becomes something entirely different. They are watching how you respond when things don't go your way. They're watching how you treat people. They're watching how you handle pressure. And when they see that your faith is not just something you talk about, but something that actually anchors you, guides you, and shapes your decisions, it becomes real. That's what James 1 is getting at when it calls us to be doers of the word, not just hearers only. Because a lived faith is a compelling faith, and kids are drawn to what is real. I mean, they have an acute sense to smell out inauthenticity, but they are drawn to something that can carry weight. That's what real faith does. It really works in real life. They need to see that your faith does too. Let me close by bringing this all together. Your kids don't need a perfect father. They need a present one, a real one, a father whose faith shows up in everyday life, a father who leans in, leads well, loves big, a father who is willing to face his own life honestly, because a man grows in direct proportion to the truth he's willing to face about himself. So here's the challenge. Don't try to overhaul everything overnight. Just do one thing on purpose this week. Pray with your kids. Some of you have never prayed with your child. Do that this week. Or start a real conversation about faith, or own a mistake. The point is to let them see your faith in motion. Small steps taken consistently are what formation is built on. And if you've felt like you've dropped the ball spiritually as a dad, if there's some distance there, some drift that you've been aware of, you've not really been responsible, it's not too late. You can re-engage. You can start today. The most powerful thing you can do is simply show back up with humility and intention. your kids are watching for that too. Because your kids don't become what you tell them, they become who you are. And when they see a faith that is real, steady, and life-giving, they won't just inherit it, they will want it.